You're listening to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And as always, we are your hosts for this show. And hey, it's Andor time. We've been only waiting for how many years for this?
It was about 2.
Yeah, it's got to be. It's got to be at least that much. Because, I mean, I don't know. I think, I remember it was actually put off, if I remember correctly. Like, it was supposed to come out before it did. I don't remember if it was a writer's strike. It was something that actually moved it, I thought.
Yeah, I think it was initially the writer's strike, and then I think, was that before COVID?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so, because I think 2023 was when Andor Season 1 came out. And I think they were trying to say, like, 2024, like last year would be, and then they moved it. I think it was supposed to be, like, at the end of last year, like in the fall or something, and then they moved it to the spring of this year. I think that's how it went.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But, I mean, again, just so you guys know, I mean, look, we're a little bit later. Oh, I hear my cat in the background. Like, wow, I really hear him in the background. But, so yes, you're not throwing your voice. That's actually
no,
a cat.
Exactly. I'm not doing some weird ventriloquist
yeah,
act.
exactly. Or you're hitting like a sound pad, you know, on an audio device. Or it's not like some new gimmick that we're coming out with where we're going to start having cat noises in this thing.
It's funny because he sounds like a porg.
Yeah, almost. I almost wish I could work him into the show somehow.
Well, Pumpkin is the same color as a porg, so.
I think that's Rigby that's actually doing that. But yeah, the funny thing is about this whole thing, in case you guys aren't aware, because again, we're probably the latest ones that are reviewing this thing. I mean, everybody else, because these episodes come out on Tuesdays.
Mm-hmm.
And so this premiered Tuesday. We're like 2 days away from the next 3 coming out. Now, a couple of things. I'm not sure if David's going to watch live tonight or if he's actually going to watch after the fact. But
no, I did talk to him earlier, though.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, what did he say?
Won't be on. I don't think he'll be on tonight, but he does know about it. He saw the advertisements for Andor. He was asking me, like, have you seen it? Is it good? I said, well, it starts off slow, and he's like, yeah, but is it good, though? Is it, like, slow but good or slow and bad? Like, well, I couldn't give him an honest answer just because I hadn't seen the last episode until now. So,
right. Well, and I mean, here's the thing. A lot of what I had been hearing leading up to this. So after the episodes premiered, as usual, I like to, even before I watch them, sometimes I'll actually try to watch reviews just to give an overall flavor of what a lot of people are saying. Because you have to remember that the people that actually saw this, like that got the screeners, not the reviewers that are like us, that are just watching this thing when it premieres. I'm talking about the people that actually got like the press screeners that were able to view this thing, you know, beforehand. Those guys got the entire series.
Oh,
like,
wow.
Yeah, they got like all
like
12
all 12?
Yep, all 12 episodes.
Jeez.
So they're obviously reviewing what comes out, but they're actually basing their reviews on the context of the entire series, whereas people like us Star Wars peasants, we're the ones, we're just basing it on, what we see week to week. And everybody has unanimously said that the thing about 1, 2, and 3, the first 3, is that it starts out like slow, and it's the slowest that it ever is. Like once these 3 episodes are done, when the next, like it ramps up big time action from there.
Yeah, I kind of figured that. I kind of figure you have to, especially, excuse me, when you, seeing that this is the last season of Andor, and we knew that, before the show even started, that this is going to be, only 2 seasons.
Yep.
we know we have to hurry up and get to the event of Rogue One, and knowing that how Rogue One starts off, it kind of, infers that, hey, you don't have a whole lot of time to waste.
Well, and to that, I think we should also point out that the way that they're structuring this season is they're going to release 3 episodes at a time over the next 4 weeks. So we got 1, 2, and 3, which is not unusual, right? They've always done something like that. They will release the first 2, or in Andor's case, they released the first 3 episodes last season, and then you got a single episode per week. But because of the way this is structured, this one took place 4 years before the Battle of Yavin. That's why you see BBY 4. That means, before Battle of Yavin, 4 years. Mm-hmm. The next one will be 3 years, then 2 years, and the final 3 episodes will be 1 year. Mm-hmm. So, that's the reason why they're doing it this way. At least one of them. I mean, there might be other practical reasons too, but that's at least one of the main reasons why they're actually releasing it like this. And there were a lot of reviewers, and it's funny because overall I'm really enjoying this one. And there was a lot of people that said like 1 or 2 had said episode 1 was really good. Episode 2 kind of slowed down a little bit. It's good. Mm-hmm. It's just the worst of the 3, and then of course mm-hmm. 3 picks up. Now,
definitely.
While I do agree with that assessment, the one thing that I have to disagree with is I didn't actually find, like when I was watching a lot of these reviews, a lot of them were really bothered by episode 2 as far as how slow it was or whatever. And I didn't find it that way at all. I mean, I thought that it was, it was cutting between the 3 or 4 stories pretty good. And I thought it was moving at a pretty good pace. It didn't, I would agree that, yeah, it's definitely the slowest, and if you had to rank them, the second episode would be at the bottom. In fact, if you had to rank them, how would you rank them?
1, 3, 2.
Yeah, it's probably what I would do too.
Well, actually, take that back. 3, 1, 2.
That's what most people are doing. I'm on the fence about it. I 3 probably is better than 1, but it's not as much of a margin as I thought it would.
Yeah, I would agree. 1 was kind of, I like the way 1 starts off.
Yeah.
In some parts, it gets a little. The thing is that like it, the way they're whispering anything and amongst each other, it's kind of hard to kind of figure out like what they're talking about for me. But obviously, I know it's you got Luthen and everybody's trying to do the whole smile and play in everyone's face that everything is okay. And everybody kind of has this whole unraveling thing from Mon Mothma's husband to Mon Mothma herself. Then you have Luthen and, I'm trying to keep pace with what they're talking about and how they kind of try to set things up. Sometimes that could be a little tricky, but...
No, and it is. And I mean, I'm glad you brought that up because one of the things that I remember thinking when I was watching the first episode was that it was really wild how, she would be smiling and all happy and then boom, like as soon as she turns her head away, she has that frightened kind
dread
of, dread or whatever it is, and it, it just shows that as this is progressing that we see that, her whole political cover's crumbling at this point, right? I mean, it's starting to fall apart. It's starting to unravel. And that's one of the things that I was looking at, too, actually through particularly episodes 1 and 3, not so much 2, but you basically see this whole thing from a continuation of season 1. And by that, I mean, when it comes to the politics, right? The Republic, Palpatine takes over the Republic. But at first, it probably didn't feel all that different. Now, of course, you have to go to the Bad Batch to really see the immediacy and what happens after and how, the Empire is slowly becoming an oppressive force. But it's only other like outlying systems that really see this. The general public just basically sees a continuation. If anything, they see like there's more order, more safety, more, all this other stuff, right? And the Senate and everything looks the same. I remember in season 1, they would show like the Senate scenes. It would look a lot like the ones we saw in Revenge of the Sith and, Phantom Menace and all that. And it just, everything looks the same. But as we're progressing through, you're starting to see that things are slowly switching over, and our main characters are starting to see that. And I think that that's one of the things that's really fascinating about watching this and why I'm excited to see this whole thing progress.
Yeah, I mean, I really want to see how did the government eventually kind of get swept away as far as, because I mean, I kind of look at it as the United States. If I just looked at the U.S. and our government, and I can't imagine what it would look like if Congress just slowly just disappeared. That would just be weird. And so I'm just really curious to see how that's being done from the political angle.
Right. And I mean, I think a lot of what's going to happen, I think what you're going to see is that Palpatine's probably going to play up the corruption. He's probably going to start to shine a light on the corruption. First of all, it'll probably be a false flag, a lot like the Separatist thing is, where he creates the Separatists and then, pretty much wins in the battle. I mean, it's like he's playing both sides. And I think that's going to happen here. He's going to sow seeds of corruption in the Senate and then use that as the excuse to dissolve the Senate. At least that's probably what I'm going to say. Now Ted joins us. Ted Adam Green joins us. And he basically ranks it as 3, 1, and 2.
Yeah.
But happy to have all. And again, that seems to be the consensus online. But and I think that one of the interesting things about this whole thing too, if you're just taking like an overview of the 3 stories before we really get deep into each of the episodes, is that it's called Andor, but this series could have easily been called Mothma too.
Well, honestly, I would probably just call it Rebellion. Well, honestly, because you're focusing on so many different people forming the rebellion, and I get the fact that Andor, he's the face of it, and sure, he plays a very pivotal role, and I'm sure we'll see, in the following weeks, how ingrained he is into the rebellion. But you can look at, like you said, you got Luthen, you got Mon Mothma, you got Bix, you have so many other people who contribute to the development or to ensure that the rebellion kind of, forms and takes shape. That you could very easily just call this, Dawn of the Rebellion or something like that, or Birth of the Rebellion, and it would have been perfectly fine. But having Andor as the focal point, and you kind of just show everything around him, and it makes sense because he has to have some sort of guidance and leadership, because he's not really a leader in the sense of an administrator. He's more of a boots on the ground kind of guy. He kind of leads he's almost kind of like the ground version of Poe Dameron in a way.
Oh yeah, well and one of the things is you see that from season 1, obviously he was just kind of on his own, wandering. He was scarred from what happened, with the whole Separatist thing, and just he was just sort of aimless, right? Things were happening to him. Whereas, starting with episode 1, we see that he's committed, but he's scarred. He's emotionally scarred, and he's getting over that. And I think that you're going to see this in a 2-part thing as far as who's the actual fulcrum of this show. Where is it pivoting? Because, you could say, okay, Andor, that's who it's named after, obviously. But you can also say Mothma on the other side, where Andor is going to because in order to tell a story this vast, you have to tell it through somebody's eyes.
Right.
You have to. The journey has to be told through a character's perspective. And so I think what's happening is, okay, Andor's the one that we have to watch go from this shiftless, aimless victim of war all the way to this prominent leader of this rebellion, which, of course, obviously in Rogue One, we see how the whole thing finally united. Because remember, we're going to be introduced to Saw Gerrera in this again. All these characters that are going to come up that we did see in Rogue One, where it was implied at Rogue One, it was kind of toward the end of, you had these very prominent factions of the rebellion that were all more or less working toward the same goal, but very differently. And sometimes they would get in each other's way. The whole thing is like really disconnected. It's really fragile. It's really just, it's sort of all over the place. You even saw that in the second episode where you had that little faction of rebels. They didn't even amongst themselves, they couldn't figure out, well, who's really in charge and what's our goal and what are we trying to do? And, you can see it's a mess. So by the time Rogue One hits, you see that through Jyn Erso, and then, of course, Andor backing her up, they go, okay, we got to turn this into a cohesive rebellion. Now, it's way more cohesive by the time Rogue One hits than it is now. Mm-hmm. And so that's why we're sort of at that embryonic stage, right? And what's interesting about it is, obviously the first episode opens with Andor, great conversation. And this is another thing that I have to say about this show that is across all 3 episodes and really so far across both seasons. And that is that the one thing that this show has that none of the other Star Wars projects have, and that includes the films, by the way, it's the nuances. There's so many nuances. And if you just look at that beginning conversation between Andor and that, I guess that
defector,
operative or whatever.
Yeah, she's kind of like a defector, a person who left the Empire. Right,
and she's sort of like working, kind of almost like how Bodhi was.
Yeah, or
Bodhi in Rogue One, or Fulcrum,
or Callus, or
Yep.
Fulcrum,
yeah. So you have that, and it's just when you look at the depth of that conversation, and just what's going on, and it was great because we find out, all right, he's stealing the TIE Avenger, and it was great to see that finally pop in fully into canon. Which, for those who don't know, that's the TIE fighter that Grand Admiral Thrawn designed, and that was super exciting to me to actually see that. So, that's actually pretty cool. And what we'll do is we'll go through each of these episodes. We'll talk about some of the discussion points. We'll talk about some of the key takeaways from each of these episodes. And, of course, along the way, what we think, and we're hoping that you guys are chatting in and telling us what you think. And we'll go through each one of these, and we'll also talk about Easter eggs from each of the episodes. I just gave you one, the TIE Avenger, but, there were more from each one. Actually, there's a lot more. But, we picked out some key ones that I think would be of interest to our audience. But a lot of this, too, across all 3 episodes, before we really get into it, the other backdrop of this, of course, is the wedding of Mon Mothma's daughter.
Yeah.
And, you're seeing that. So, you have like 4 different things happening in this. You have the wedding, and so a lot of it's told in the backdrop of that. You, of course, have what Andor's doing. He's trying to get back and reunite with Bix and all that. Then you have Bix, and she's on, I forgot the name of the planet already that she's on. But she's basically, hiding out with this family, and the Empire is essentially starting to check out and make sure that all these people are who they say they are and whether or not they belong there or not. So you have that. You, of course, have Dedra and Cyril, who, are going to meet, his mom and just, she's, of course, finding out that now she's been chosen by Krennic. We see Krennic returning. So, I mean, there's a lot of really great things that we can dig into in this episode.
Yeah, I mean, from, like you said, the TIE Avenger, on the onset, it kind of had a Independence Day moment, which I thought was hilarious. But yeah, the whole speech that Cassian had with that young operative who was kind of trying to find her way in this whole story. Even the whole flirtation thing, like she thinks you're cute, and it was just kind of like those little light moments in a kind of a tense situation. Because Cassian's all serious, like he's all worried, like, what was that about? What's going on? And she's like, oh, she just said you were cute. He's just like,
yeah, that was kind of funny.
Whatever.
Actually.
Like he doesn't even care about that. He's like, look, I'm just worried about the mission. But then when he tries to steal the TIE Avenger, he has that Independence Day moment where, remember when Jeff Goldblum, when Will tried the alien spacecraft and he started trying to fly out the hangar and the instructions were backwards.
Oh yeah.
So he ends up going in reverse and then he can't steer the stupid thing.
Well, see, now here's another note that I took from that, by the way, which it's really refreshing to see these people jumping into these ships and not knowing how they work.
Exactly.
Versus somebody like Rey, who no matter what ship she gets in, can suddenly fly the thing. I mean, granted, all right, she had a little bit of an issue with the Falcon, but still, the way that it was done in Andor is way more realistic.
Well, yeah, especially and the cool thing about it was that it's different enough from the original TIE fighters.
Yeah, that too.
Because, this is a whole brand new thing that, it's like a prototype. And everything is, I'm surprised he was able to turn the stupid thing on. I mean, because, I guess maybe some things are kind of, I don't want to say universal, but things are kind of in this normal place where you will find it in the TIE fighter. So if you kind of know how TIE fighters operate, you kind of know, like, okay, thrusters maybe over here, or, to turn the thing on is, will be that. But even the controls, that's the thing I love about an X-Wing. An X-Wing is kind of almost like a stereotypical fighter jet. You got the stick, you got the, the yoke, and you're just flying it like you see on Top Gun or something like that. That makes sense, but the TIE fighters, you got these two handles, and you're using them to... Because I saw Kylo Ren, he would use it to, do this to go forward or go faster, and... I mean, I guess it's kind of cool.
I mean, some of it makes sense on that, but I mean, the Avenger. The thing with the Avenger is it's a prototype too, so it's not even in full production.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of people that probably don't even know how to use it in the Empire.
I mean, that's why because he was supposed to be a test pilot. I mean, they don't even have a manual for this thing probably. So, I mean, yeah, and he's stealing this stupid thing, and he's just like, all right, well, I'm just go off into space and I'll figure it out one way or the other. And it's like, dude, you're taking a gamble because, number one, you're on this Imperial facility. You don't know how to fly the thing. I mean, they might shoot you down or you might crash it, and that's it. You're just taking a huge risk.
Here's the thing that was funny, because when he finally blew the hole in it, now I know he started blowing a bunch of other holes in it too, which the other thing that was kind of interesting about that is... That was basically Sienna Labs, or no, Sienna. It's like a Sienna test facility or something. That's really similar to what's on Lothal, which is like Sienna Project Lab or something. I remember from
Project
Rebels.
Development.
Yeah, like they had a similar thing. But when he was on that and he was stealing the TIE fighter out of that, and he blows that hole in it. He blew a couple other ones, but it was like the way that he was so erratic and could barely control it. It's amazing that he had the precision to just fly out of that hole.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's really risky. I mean, if you think about it, if he had miscalculated at any point, it would have been over for him. And it's like, when you really stop and think about these guys having to take that kind of chance, on a regular basis where, this stuff may work or it may not. I mean, it blows my mind.
Then you got troopers behind you, who are blasting at you. And, you almost have to wonder about the durability because, we know these TIE fighters really don't come with shields like that. Not like how some X-Wings do have shields on them. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, it's just like, okay, again, the thing gets hit hard enough, it's a wrap.
Yeah, I mean, it was just one of those things where I just remember thinking that was crazy. And I mean, there's just so many issues with that. And then, of course, he's off kind of on his own adventure for pretty much this entire story arc, honestly.
Yeah, he's supposed to meet some contact, and he ends up getting captured. It kind of looks like a weird version of Vietnam or something.
Yeah, and that was pretty crazy too. That whole thing, because obviously there's supposed to be some faction of rebels, but yet they have like zero organization. They don't even know who's in charge, really.
Right,
they end up turning on each other. Yeah.
He's all trying to tell him, like, you might want to establish a perimeter or, something. These people aren't going to, people are coming up lost. You don't know who can fly what. He's like, well, no. If, we can't kill him because he's the only one who can fly us out of here. It's like, well, we all can't fit in the ship. And, it's just, but I think that's the realistic approach. And I think that's why Andor works so well, is because they take Star Wars and they insert a healthy amount of reality into it. Because it's like, yes. This is what will be happening if this were just to take place. Like, everybody's going to try to be the leader or some, or you're going to have a person who thinks they know more than anybody. You're going to have certain situations like, okay, well, what do we do in this situation of, hey, we all can't make it out of here. Well, who gets left behind? Who should stay? You have to make these command decisions, and you're not even technically the commander. So, that's one thing I really love about it, is that it kind of puts you in that moment where you almost have to ask yourself, yeah, what the heck would I do in this situation?
Yeah, well, and I think it's also a reminder, too, because when we first meet the rebellion in episode 4, like literal episode 4, as in A New Hope, they're, compared to the Empire, there's still a little bit of a looseness maybe to them. But, they're pretty much an actual force. Something to be reckoned with, no pun intended on the force part. But it's one of those things that I think that people can see, oh, yeah, this is like an army, this is the good guys. Here, when you're seeing the very embryonic stages of the rebellion, it's like, it's amazing these guys were able to even get to the point where they're at. And I'm really curious to see, like, these essentially kids that captured Andor. It's like, well, who is ultimately above them? They kept mentioning Maya, I think, was like somebody who was in, really in charge or something. And it's like, okay, well, who? Because obviously the biggest surprise, which of course was actually the last scene of the first episode, was when, they're just kind of discussing and going back and forth, and things are escalating a little bit, and then all of a sudden they just start opening fire on each other. Yeah, you're just like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. And of course, what's funny is the audience was then put in the same. Andor was basically representing us, where he's like, whoa, hold on, what's going on? And it just shows that, it's one of those things that you just see how just completely disconnected, how fragile, how almost broken the rebellion is at this point, where, obviously the Luthen, Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, that version, which is really where it's the birth of the leadership of the rebellion. That's starting to get organized. But even through this whole thing, she's still trying to fight for financial support. I don't know how many people remember from the last season that was the big thing of the last season, that her main source of income for the rebellion was being cut off, and now she's like trying to find additional funding sources, and that's still in play.
Yeah, because that's when the whole thing with the banking clan and
Yeah, right.
and then that's when that one guy asked for that favor, or not a favor, but pretty much like, hey, all right, but my son needs a wife.
Yep. Yeah, that's why we have, as we
This
see
whole wedding thing.
in the photo, and I always do that. Here, it's like, yeah, you get this whole wedding thing, right? And so now that's bothering her because, and she has to do that. And, again, it's kind of like she's starting to feel the weight of perhaps being exposed politically because obviously, she has to be really careful about who she trusts, who she talks to, because a lot of these people that used to be, her trusted colleagues are now on the side of the Empire because, again, everybody forgets the Empire is the legitimate government. They're essentially the Republic.
Yeah, well, the thing is, and that's the problem, again, too, when you even kind of mirrors reality in a way, is because most of these people are blue bloods. You're talking about the creme de la creme. You can see some of their spaceships, the way they dress. Mm-hmm. I mean, these people are rich. These are the wealthy people, and Mon Mothma happens to be a part of that. However, she's not about. She's one of those type of people that's like, okay, I may be wealthy, but I see the struggles of the rest of the galaxy, and I want to do something to help that. Whereas some of the blue bloods are kind of like, hey, it's not really affecting us too much. We're still wealthy. We're still doing our thing. Hey, this should be good for us. And she's kind of looking at things down the road like, yeah, this doesn't look good. And that's the thing I love about Mon Mothma is because, and it's funny because I used to think her name was Mom Mothma. But that's what I want to speak to is her being a mother, because not only does she has the weight of this whole political thing that she's trying to do, where she's kind of competing, or I won't say competing, but she's fighting with the people that she used to call friend, but then she also has infighting with her own husband, who's siding with the Empire. And then now she has her children, who one of them kind of agrees with the Empire as well. And she's trying to balance her identity between being a political idealist and an agent of change, but also being a mom. And also a wife, but more so being a mom. And we see that come to fruition in episode 3, where she's kind of like giving her daughter like, look, you don't have to do this. We can just tell everybody, hey, it's not the right time. I'm sorry you guys waste your time and your money coming, but hey.
Well, and that's her putting family first, right? Because
yeah, she's like, and I'll stand with you.
Obviously, that funding will go away.
Yeah, exactly. But she's like, you know what? Because she doesn't want her daughter to end up in the same place that she is.
Yep.
And that's what I'm saying. That's the juxtaposition of being a mom and also a political idealist. And she's like, look, this is going to impact everything that we're trying to do. Luthen could, all of that, like everything they've been working for could be thrown away because she makes this decision to stand with her daughter if her daughter doesn't want to go through with it. So, yeah, it's really a tangled web for Mon Mothma, and I can see why she's definitely under a lot of stress.
Well, and I mean, not only that, you have the pressure of, she could very easily be seen as a terrorist in this whole thing and as a traitor to the Republic in that sense, and so she has to weigh on that, even though she knows that she's in the right about all this. So there's that, and I mean, and a lot of these scenes were played brilliantly because the thing, at least in episode 1 that we see, is they did this really elegant walking and talking thing where it would go from one person to the other, and we're following her around and having these different conversations, and it's like these, almost like these like one take, one shot, camera moves and all that. And I mean, it was really elegantly done. And I thought that really added to the emotion of that scene. But so you have like her inner turmoil, which we talked about, but then you also have the idea that they were trying to be in touch with Cassian, and they can't get any signals in there. They can't make it obvious what they're doing because they might be discovered. And so there was that whole thing where they kept trying to, get in touch with them. Mm-hmm. I just thought a lot of that stuff was, really cool.
Oh, yeah. Now, with Dedra and Cyril, their relationship and their whole thing is very interesting as well, because now you have the return of Krennic, and he's having this whole conference with them, and he kind of has all the higher-ups and he's like, look, outside of this room, no one else matters. This is it, and you kind of have to look around the room, and it's like, here's what we're trying to... And that whole film that he showed about the little... Man, I was cracking up. Because, they have to be sitting in that meeting like, what the heck are we watching? Like, this is like some weird PBS special on this planet, and it's little spiders that make this yarn or this little silk thread. And it's like, why does the Emperor care so much about this?
Well, that's actually kind of a cool thing too, right? Because the big takeaway from there, and this is where I got really excited, because planet Gorman, that's like a big thing in Legends. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of that tracks. It looks like what they're probably going to do is talk about the Gorman massacre, which I don't remember what book that was in. I remember reading it though, and that's basically one of the biggest atrocities the Empire ever did. Mm-hmm. And that was something that I remember writing in my my personal notes, because I was like, scanning for a bunch of different things. But then I was like, wait a minute, Gorman, I know that planet. And it was really interesting that they're going there, because it looks like that's probably the direction that it's going to go. Now, I don't know how that's all going to work out, because then they had that what's that thing? What's that this is what happens when you like watch stuff really fast. It says substance. Oh, calcite.
Oh, the
calcite, yeah. Calcite was what it was called. Took me a second to remember. But that's that new substance that's on Gorman. And the way that they're strategizing on how to get the citizens out of there, and how they're going to do a lot of stuff. I mean, it was very much like how the Nazis actually worked, during World War II, and like the events leading up to it. So I mean, there's just a lot of really interesting things that are happening, and it's really cool to see Krennic at this stage, because he's talking about how this calcite stuff is gonna coat the reactor lenses or something, and the way he's framing is like it's gonna give us ultimate power or whatever, which of course is a callback to Palpatine's unlimited power, when he said it'll give unlimited power. And I think what people are really thinking of at the time that they're hearing this stuff, like the people in the meeting and all that, they're thinking, oh, like an energy source, where he's really thinking the Death Star. So it's one of those like double entendres, right, where it's kind of like unlimited power. We're not talking like electricity or that kind of thing. We're talking more like planet destruction and
exactly, like being able to annihilate an entire planet.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of
the book you were talking about, Forged in Battle.
Forged in Battle, yeah. That's it. Man, no, that's been a minute. When was that published? Does it say?
2016.
Oh, so it wasn't that. Yeah, okay. So it wasn't terribly long ago.
Nope.
Yeah, I remember reading. I just don't remember when. That was the thing. It was like, when did I do this?
I remember during that time, man, you were like plowing through a bunch of stuff.
Well, it was, but the thing is I don't know. I could have sworn that was a Legends book. I didn't think it was in the new canon.
It is a Legends book.
Oh, is that just one of the holdovers from? Because I read a few Legends books after the whole thing hit, right? But I wonder if that's original, because I had heard rumors that they were actually going to continue to publish Legends books, but I don't know. I had to investigate that one a little bit more. But I mean, that was just one of those things that I don't know. I thought that it was cool that they brought that in. I thought it was cool that they're bringing it in with Krennic. I like how they're bringing him around. I like how Dedra is not comfortable being under him and not wanting to deal with him.
Right.
And yeah, just a lot of those. I think a lot of the issues, again, it's all about nuances, right? There's a lot of issues that are facing each one of these characters. Nobody's really one-dimensional in this thing. Even on the Empire side, you have people that are like, you know what, I don't know if I want to get involved in this.
Right.
It's like, it's not a bunch of people in, black hats bent on, world destruction or whatever. It's like, a lot of these people are like, no, I don't want to do this.
Exactly.
Plus, you start getting too high up and you start getting noticed by all the higher up people. Now there's a little bit more on the line. It starts out where you're just kind of happily doing your little job. The next thing you know, you're force choked by Vader or something because you
right, exactly.
You went high enough that you got those responsibilities. So yeah,
sometimes it's good to be middle management instead of
exactly. Kind of blend. You got enough power to do what you need to do, but you're not like super noticed.
Fly under the radar so you don't get choked by Vader.
Exactly. So some of the Easter eggs. I already mentioned the TIE Avenger. There's the range troopers from Solo. I caught that. I couldn't remember where they were from, but I knew that was the range troopers. The Rakatan invasion reference from Knights of the Old Republic. I did not catch that one initially. HoloNet news reports linked to early Rebel cells. I thought that was anytime the HoloNet news comes out, because that's like a Legends thing. Some of the Rebel pilot uniforms were callbacks to Rogue One, which makes sense because this series is trying to tie itself into Rogue One.
Right.
Dedra's promotion mirrors Thrawn's rise, which I also noticed. In fact, I didn't initially catch it along with, as far as Thrawn goes. My original thing was Sloane, Rey Sloane, because that's somebody that is in the new canon. And she's, she started out she was a captain in New Dawn, which is the very first book written under the new canon, all the way up through like Aftermath and all that stuff when, she's basically like an admiral. She might have even made it to a grand admiral. So to me, when I first saw Dedra, like before we knew her name, I thought that was going to be Rey Sloane because the description is even very similar. So I would have liked to have seen that. And then, of course, some of the background visuals tease the U-Wings and the TIE Interceptor. So, that's basically what we got going on for Episode 1. Now, Episode 2, again, this is where things slow down a little bit, right? I mean, but to me, when people were saying that it was mainly Cassian and, these ragtag rebels or whatever, I thought that was pretty much going to be the whole episode. I was pleasantly surprised that wasn't the whole episode.
Yeah, I mean, like them, of course, there was somebody else. There was another group out there where they were kind of, I guess they were taking shots at each other. And
well, that was the initial group when they were, so when Episode 1 ended, where they started shooting at each other and then they broke apart. Yeah, that's
so now
where
you got one group shooting at the other group.
Right, and then they're kind of calling out to each other. And the thing that was interesting about this, too, because we talked earlier about Cassian's leadership and how that's what pretty much Season 2 is going to be. Season 1 of Andor was all about Cassian going from this disenfranchised, shiftless, victim of war to actually being a part of something that meant something. So it's kind of like his journey to the rebellion. Now, we're going from him joining the rebellion to eventually becoming that leader that we see in Rogue One. And so I think that episode 2 here is he's starting to demonstrate more of that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, trying to coach people like, hey, did you notice that kind of got quiet over there? You might want to establish a perimeter, or you might, just
Yeah. Or even getting water, right? It's like, hey, man, there's a tarp up there. Why don't you,
exactly.
Might be a good time. It's not going to rain forever. I like that one. That was
exactly. And then when one of those rebel soldiers kind of found, I think Myra's leg or whoever's foot that was.
Oh yeah.
And I was still in the boot or whatever. It was just kind of like, that was freaky.
Well, and that's the thing, and I mean, and again, it's sort of like, he kind of helps him out a little bit in the end and, before taking off. I mean, Cassian is starting to, of course, that's kind of getting into 3 a little bit, but the point is that we're seeing a definite shift from him just being like a low-level rebel soldier to starting to take on leadership responsibilities and demonstrate traits that he can be a leader. Because remember, he was so far from that in season 1. I mean, he
wasn't trying to do that
at all. And
he was running from it because when Luthen. Remember when Luthen was all chasing him when he was in that kind of...
oh, yeah.
It was just like, all right, and yeah, he wanted no parts of that. Kind of almost kind of like Han, kind of like Poe in a way. It's just like, look, I'm just trying to... Even John Boyega, Finn. Like, Finn wasn't trying to be, he was trying to get the heck out of there every chance he got. And then eventually you kind of see what's going on around you. Like, yeah, I guess I better, roll up my sleeves and get in this and do something.
Absolutely. And I was also happy to see, the whole Ferrex, Bix, like that whole storyline was being brought forth a little bit more where, once again, it was like in episode 1 we had seen where the Empire pretty much visited, but, it was pretty benign at that point. Now, of course, episode 3 is we're going to see the full effects of that. But even in episode 2, it's like they're leading up. It's like, they're in like the 800
the 600
sector or whatever. Yeah, and it's like, you guys, we got to keep a watch on it. I mean, they're not really near here, but they're sort of in that outskirts, they're kind of they're getting a little close, so we have to be prepared. And that's basically, I think, the problem is that a lot of times everybody, just like you were talking about the more ultra wealthy blue blood types, where they were saying, hey, none of this is affecting us, we still have all our power. They didn't know they didn't, but they still have the illusion of it. Well, from the lower level, though, you have pretty much almost the same thing, right? Like, everybody's like, well, they're only after these type of people, or, they're only oppressing that system. Like, we're okay.
Yeah, because we follow the rules, so we don't have anything to worry about.
Yeah.
We support the Empire, so they wouldn't bother us.
Yeah. And, I mean, I think that one of the things that the second episode did really well, it was a really good bridge to show this descent. Because if you think about it, each one of these storylines is showing us more and more about what's really happening, and things are progressing. And that's why I said that I don't think that the second episode was really as slow as what a lot of people said it was, even though I could see where you might say that, all right, there's a little bit of a halt in the action. I mean, it literally is a bridge between episodes 1 and 3. Because, episode 3 really takes off and, becomes a big thing. But
I also like, and I think this was in 2. That's the problem sometimes when you see them, especially when you watch them all. The story is so connected that sometimes you forget which episode was which.
Well, it really is one big giant. Like, you could just
Yeah, I
plow
mean, it's
through
one
this
giant
as one
episode.
thing. Like if you just took out all the end credit sequences and beginning credits and just edited this thing as like one big thing, you wouldn't know.
Yeah. But it was the conversation that Krennic had with Dedra when he was talking about. He was like, yeah, he recognized that, like, yeah, you have a plan already. Like, I could see it. And, he was like, what would you do? He's like, well, propaganda won't do it alone. You need someone who's going to, be a boots on the ground type of person who's going to ensure that this is going to happen and that. And he's like, okay. But it just shows you just the intelligence, and we'll see that more. And when we get to 3, how calculated and how smart Dedra is. Like, she's really got an eye for things, and she knows how to get things done. And reading the room, reading people, just she just has a real talent. I mean, I see why she's an ISB, because man, she kind of reminds me of a female version of why is his name escaping me now? Gideon.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
Yeah,
without question. Well, and I mean, again, that's one of the things that this whole show is really good at doing. I mean, it much like season 1, it's not the same type of Star Wars show that I think we're used to. When you look at The Mandalorian or Ahsoka or even The Acolyte or anything like that, I mean, this is a completely different show. This is really more of a political thriller set in the Star Wars universe. I mean, this really, we were always talking about they should make genre-based
this is
shows
kind of like
or
Clear
whatever.
and Present Danger.
Yeah, exactly.
Patriot games,
Yep.
that type of,
Yeah, like your John Clancy type things, or or Tom Clancy. The stuff like that, like these more intricate type political thrillers that have, also have some action in them, obviously.
Yeah.
But, there's like a distinct lack of the Jedi, the Sith, the Force. And you know what? You don't miss it. And yet it feels very much like Star Wars. I mean, it was really cool too, on that planet. You know what? I gotta look up. I wrote it down. Mina Rao. That's it. Mina Rao. That's like the little farmland planet that they're on.
The one, like I said, it keeps looking like Lothal.
Yeah. Yeah, it does actually. But I mean, the thing that's funny about it is it's really weird to just see stormtroopers standing in the middle of like a wheat field. It's like it's really strange. But again, I mean, it doesn't feel that out of place though. I mean, I really appreciate seeing these kinds of things. I mean, even going back to episode 1 a little bit, where you had that board meeting that Krennic was leading, pretty much. It's now you're seeing the inner workings of the Empire and how they're planning this stuff. And, another Easter egg that I neglected to mention, by the way, was that you actually saw the Project Stardust logo on the guy's shoulder. It's like a patch. So, they're doing like these little callbacks, but what they're trying to do is they're trying to weave all this stuff in. Yeah, and I mean, what I really wonder is, especially once they get to maybe around 2 years. So not the episodes that are coming out this Tuesday, but a week from Tuesday. Now you're kind of in the time period where Catalyst takes place. And I wonder, I don't think that they're going to obviously, like take scenes out of it or anything like that, but I just wonder like how many, there's going to be Easter eggs that will call back Catalyst at all. Because, I mean, you're right in there, man. You're even talking the same characters a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think this is it's a very kind of a, I guess you can call it kind of a vast but yet intricate sandbox that we're in, when we're looking at season 2 of Andor. I keep wanting to say Andor. But you do have, like you said, Eric, you have a lot of callbacks. There's a lot of familiarity in things, but there's so much depth and like you said earlier, the nuance that really makes this show pop. I also want to talk about the cinematography of it. Like, man, some of these shots,
man, yes,
man, are just beautiful, man. And just the colors and the way it just looks in certain spaces. It's like, man, they really, I mean, Tony Gilroy really did a good job, especially when you were talking about earlier that the blocking for the conversations that Mon Mothma was having with people as she's passing them, and the way the camera has to move, where the people have to stop, have the conversation, and keep moving in and out of the frame. And I mean, it was just wow.
Yeah, it blows you away. You know, it's like, hey, no lazy volume shooting here.
Exactly.
You know,
and it feels so real. It feels like a really real. Even the fact that you brought this up when we were watching episode 3, but the fact that it had like manual doors, like we're not used to seeing that, and I didn't even think about it until you said it. I'm like, wow, he's right. Like I didn't even think about it, but to see somebody actually physically open a door, I don't recall seeing that in Star Wars because I'm so used to them either just kind of opening or something is going up and down. And
you know what? My favorite door is still like that death door from Phantom Menace.
Oh, when it closes like super fast, man, yeah. You get
The
caught
one
on
on
that
the
thing,
Naboo
or if thing
Palace.
malfunctions,
Yeah,
oh, it's a
that
wrap
thing,
for you.
that has got to be like the most deadly door in all of Star Wars.
That's got to be like some emergency door. Like, okay, we need something to shut quick. Like that's the one. That's the door you go through.
See, that's right up there with the Force Awakens bridge that has like no guardrails at all. It's just a platform.
Right. Exactly.
But no, you're right though, man. The cinematography, like if you think, I remember the opening shot of episode 1. You know, when he's in that whole like little base or whatever, and I'm just like, yep, this is Andor. Yep. I mean, you know, it's just so different. It's just so
it feels
wonderful.
Different. Yeah, man.
Yeah. All right. Well, some Easter eggs from episode 2 are we have some early operations near Yavin 4. So that's pretty interesting that they're starting to bring, you know, Yavin 4 because, of course, we know it from A New Hope, but they actually did show that base, obviously, in Rogue One. So we have that. Wolf Yularen and Tarkin are name dropped, so that was really cool to see. The Tarkin one doesn't surprise me because he factors very heavily into the story of Rogue One, but the Yularen one sort of surprised me. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, after Admiral Mahdi, he was in that little boardroom when Vader force choked Mahdi and everything else. Yularen was basically like the head of the military or something, you know, back during that time, and he kind of took. This is of course before Vader then, you know, took over an empire, but it was nice to see him name checked. Of course, I already talked about the unlimited power reference. You know, that was a little bit of a callback to the Palpatine's thing. There's the mining guild tech references, which I believe we also see. I don't know if it was really referring to the Tabana gas mines for Cloud City, but Lando mentioned the mining guild in that movie as well. And then, of course, you know, you got the Death Star foreshadowing via Project Stardust. So you have some callbacks there. So now we move into episode 3 where we get a little bit of a bump in the action again, right? Like one had some pretty solid action in it. 2 slowed down, gave us a little bit of development, a little bit of story, and now we're back up. And of course, you know, one of the things that everybody has been talking about, it's great. It's the whole sexual assault scene.
Oh, right.
You know, which, you know, it's kind of funny because the way that some of the people were carrying on about it, you know, particularly people like Star Wars Theory and stuff like that, like, you know, do we really need this in Star Wars and all that? I was on their side at first until I actually saw the scene. And then I'm like, I don't know, man. It doesn't. I mean, there really wasn't anything like crazy that.
Well, you know,
I mean, it was dark, sure, but I mean, it fits the tone of Andor, though. You know.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes Andor stand out from every other project is that you really get to see. And we talked about even with Rogue One, right? The grit of war, and you start to see how dark and treacherous and just like you really have some scummy people. And in war, I mean, it's almost like no, it's almost like a no holds barred type thing. And yeah, you have military people who, like, again, it's the empire. Their whole thing is imposing their will on people. Like that's the basis of the empire is like, you know what? We don't need permission from you. We take what we want. And on a macro level, it's, we'll come invade your planet, take your resources, whatever you have that we feel like we need in order to accomplish our objective. On the micro, though, when you look at the individuals who make up the empire, you see that these are the type of people that you have working in the empire and their mindset. So now you understand, like, its totality. Like, when you see someone like this particular officer trying to impose his will on a young lady, as terrible as that is, he's running for some political seat probably in the next couple of years. He's trying to move up within the empire. And, these are the type of people who have that type of mentality where, they don't care about people. They just care about their personal objectives.
Well, the funny thing about it, and this is what makes the Empire so interesting in the new canon, starting with the books, and, it's continuing through the series, is that you actually have some people that are like the vicious, like Nazi type, right? Don't care about anybody. They're going to abuse their authority, that kind of thing. And then you have other people where, it's just like a job to them. Like they're, maybe a radar technician. Like, remember Matt, the radar technician?
Yeah, Matt, the radar.
You have people like that. Or you have, even like some of these officers or whatever that they think that they're not privy to what Palpatine's doing. They don't know.
Or like the guy that Cyril was training.
Yeah,
in
right.
This episode, like,
Man,
oh yeah, you
that
probably
speech, by the way, was hilarious.
Man,
like the way that Cyril was actually like, saying, "Hey, man, you can really make a difference in here." Like, when this guy was like trying to steal this, and I mean, it was just so funny.
Yeah.
All right, so this unidentified viewer basically says, the lieutenant guy screamed like a little girl.
Because he was getting his butt kicked by a big girl.
See, because here's the thing, and this is when we were watching this, and I'm sitting there like watching this unfold, going, okay, Bix is kind of trained, like she's not. I mean,
some run of the mill.
Yeah, so I was really happy to see that she actually did kick the crap out of him and killed him, because it's like, okay, that makes more sense given her level of training. She's just not some, like farm girl on the planet or something. It's almost like Harrison Ford in the movie Witness, right? He was kind of posing as like these Amish dudes, and then when they ran into these guys in town that were, harassing him because they knew the Amish people wouldn't do anything about it, but he ended up like just like beating the crap out of the guy. It's like, hey man, he's a little different, So so that was cool. But yes, the other big scene, speaking of Cyril, we gotta talk about the dinner scene.
Oh
with
my goodness,
Cyril's mother and Dedra, and I mean,
man, that was awesome. Awesome. I mean, because you had the tension, the comedy, the awkwardness. I mean, you had everything in this one particular scene.
Yeah.
From Dedra trying to figure out what outfit to, because once again, she's meeting the mom. She's like, okay, I know I got to make a good impression. I'm trying to be cool. She's practicing her smile in the mirror. I mean, that was just hilarious. Trying to figure out what outfit to wear, and then like the mom shows up. And she's all hell bent on embarrassing and just emasculating her kid.
Which, of course, we saw plenty of.
Yeah.
In the first season. I was just glad that they weren't serving cereal, because that's all you would see in the first season. They would just be sitting down, silently eating cereal, and then, of course, she was just, berating Cyril, and, of course, bringing up, the uncle and all that. So, yeah, I mean, it was, and, of course, obviously, Dedra, once she emasculates Cyril to the nth degree and he goes running off.
Yeah.
Then
he
she
needs a moment in his corner.
pretty much, you know,
and
lays
she
down
lays
the law
down
a
the
little
law
bit.
to mom. Man, and that's just like...
Took away all the ammunition. Be like, yeah, you know that uncle you're talking about? Yeah, he's a criminal. So,
yeah,
you know, do you really want to be bringing this guy up? Because ISB, I can investigate him. You know, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
So you're going to change your tone. You're going to do that. I mean, she started being really demand. And that's just like, she started imposing once again. She was trying to be cool. But she was like, okay, I'm going to see. I have to impose my will again, once again. And show her that you're not going to do me like you do him. So here's how it's going to go.
And she was also protecting him because she could see that, you know, he just wasn't going to stand up to her. So she's like, all right, I'm going to have to step in and just...
Show her how it's done.
Yep. And then, of course, you know, when he finally came out from his little cry or whatever, he kind of saw, well, things are a little different now. So
the heck happened? Like, I laid down for 5 minutes, and all of a sudden my mom's complimenting me, and...
Yeah,
okay, what did you do?
Yeah, that was really cool. And, I mean, there was a lot of things like that, right? Like, so she's coming to his defense. I mean, even though we're jumping around a little bit, it's like even at the end when those, you know, like when the, what would you call it?
The little platoon of
farmers, troopers. the people at the end. They're like the, are they farmers or miners? I keep thinking
farmers.
They're like.
You talking about on the.
Yeah, like on the farm planet. Yeah.
Yeah, they were farmers because they had like silo and they were.
Well, that's true. They do have grain.
Like taking care of the grain, and they were kind of making.
Well, yeah,
food
I mean, in the episode, it's called Harvest.
Yeah.
So there is that, yeah. But I mean, it's like, you know, he ends up staying, right, and helping them, and you know, I mean, obviously he's reuniting with Bix too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I mean, he's pretty much helping them fight back, and he's, again, inching slowly to the whole idea of, hey, I'm going to be a part of something. And not only is he a part of something, but he's starting to, like we said before, take on a leadership role. You know, so that, I thought a lot of that was cool. I mean, there was just so many, because if you really stop and think about a lot of the tension that was leading up to a lot of that stuff, you know, we talked about the whole, you know, assault scene, and we talked about some of the other stuff, but when you really factor in everything that was a part of all that, where the Empire started to, or the Imperial soldiers actually showed up a little bit earlier than they expected. Mm-hmm. They didn't have time to get out because that one dude had to go talk to the girl that he was all into. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there was just a lot of really, I thought, I was actually content staying on that story. You know, a lot of times when you get onto these little side stories or whatever, you're kind of like, all right, man, I get it. Can we get back to like the Mothma stuff? And, you know, but I was content actually staying in that story because it was just done so well.
Well, that's why I think that episode is kind of like everybody. It was kind of a breaking point for everyone. I think it was a breaking point for Cyril and Dedra because, you know, of course, it was one of those things where they had to contest with the mom. Mm-hmm. Mom pushed them to their breaking point where where Dedra's like, okay, look, this is how it's going to be. I make sure he calls you on the weekends. You know, she's like giving her the whole schedule. But then you had a breaking point where with Bix, because remember that guy started being creepy in episode 2, the first time he showed up.
That's true.
And this time he got even more, and she was like, okay, she finally reached her breaking point, and she fought back. Same goes for the farmers, like Russell and all them. Okay, they got to a breaking point. It was like, okay, we gotta move quickly, but they couldn't move exactly when they wanted to because homeboy wanted to go over there and have a little alone time with this little chick, and that kind of delayed their departure, and the Empire showed up. But then again, breaking point, Cassian wasn't getting anything. He was trying to receive messages. It wasn't coming through clear. Why he couldn't go back home, he's like, screw it, I'm going back anyway. And he shows up, guns a-blazing, which was awesome because you see the targeting on that TIE Avenger, man. That thing is.
Love the TIE Avenger. Again, I mean, I'm just so.
That thing is. I want one of those. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, I think, and then we see Mom Mothma. You know, she gets, and she's like our final piece. Is like we see the weight of everything we talked about earlier, from being a mom, political idealist, to a rebel leader and a wife, and everything is kind of like boiled over to the point where I think it was her sister or somebody or a friend of hers just like gave her a couple of shots, and now she's dancing the night away. She's trying to just forget about the pressure that she's under and just for one moment just release it all. And even her husband's kind of looking at her like, yeah, she's looking a little different. You know, she's not usually like this.
Yeah,
she's so poised, and now I see her. She's just like frolicking around the room. She's dancing. You got the drone disco ball.
That's what I'm saying, man.
Around.
I mean, we got to give a little shout out to the disco drone, because that thing is just, you know, everything was all, they had the little harp thing, and, you know, they're basically playing the Star Wars version of Yacht Rock or something. I don't know. But, and then all of a sudden, you see this orb flying out, just like pumping these like jams or whatever, and just, yeah, exactly. And I'm like, man, I'm just starting to see that thing in like virtual scenes where just every scene in Star Wars, like some like thing, and then all of a sudden that orb flies through, just playing and you know, the
see,
tunes.
If Robot Chicken was still around, they probably would do something about that.
I mean, that was just, I don't know, there was just something cool about that whole scene to me. I mean, that was the thing that I latch onto. That's the kind of thing that I do. That's just my quirkiness.
Oh, trust me.
But yeah, no,
right
I mean,
there.
you're right though about the, you know, the context of that is the fact that, you know, Luthen is starting to lose control of the rebellion. It's gonna start to fall less to him and more to her, because I have a feeling what's gonna happen is he's gonna start getting more and more ineffective, or at least maybe not having as much, you know, like just not as much. What am I trying to say? Like not as much control. Like, because if you look at Andor season 1, he had like the ultimate control over anything that the rebellion was doing. And now it's not going to be that, right? It's going to be more Mothma. Then you're going to see people like Saw Gerrera, you know, coming up a little bit. I mean, it's going to be things, it's going to be more like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think that I think that that's starting to weigh in on her a little bit. You know, I think that she's starting to see, like, man, you know, a lot of these things that I knew, a lot of things that are going on, you know, it's just not happening. And I think that that's one of the things that you have to look at when you're looking at this big transition of power, is the fact that first it has to go from, you know, maybe him, like Luthen, I mean, having this tight grip, and anybody that wants to do anything different is basically squashed or whatever. And then, of course, you have all these leaders like Mothma, Saw Gerrera, people like that start to rise up, and they just have like their own little sector, their own little, you know, version of the rebellion. They're going to do the rebellion their way. And then it's not until Rogue One that we actually see, like, no, we can't have this. If we're going to be effective, we all have to unite and work together. And, of course, that happens at the Battle of Scarif. And that is when the rebellion is truly born. But I think that, you know, Mon is basically seeing, like, you know, the world that she knew is disappearing quickly. You know, the Senate is not what it was. This rebellion is starting to get a little bit more out of control. It's rising in prominence, which is something that you want, but at the same time, you don't want it to be on anybody's radar that it shouldn't be. Right. And I think the pressure is just getting to her, and then she's, of course, dancing the night away to kind of forget, and, you know, downing a bunch of drinks.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, like I said, I think it was really well done. Great character development. Without having to give a whole lot of exposition. You can just see it in watching the story. the nonverbals were really key because you can tell
Yes.
watching her have these conversations then turn into dread, and then you see her throughout this whole episode arc she's been drinking a whole lot more as as the episodes are going along. If you're really keying in, like, this is like her fifth glass, man. She might want to slow down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of different things that are done very well. Like I said, the character development, watching Cassian slowly start to slide into leadership. Bix, of course, becoming more. You can see the fight return back, to her, that she never really let it go. Even after being in captivity, she's still a fighter. And it's just a really well done, well acted, well shot. My goodness. Like, even this shot is just, the lighting and everything is just really, really just gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, that was really, honestly, that whole wedding scene was just incredible. I mean, when you just look at the set design and just
sound
everything.
design.
Yeah, everything about it. Literally, the show is like a film. It really is. Like, if you just threw this in movie theaters, it would be fine. That's probably what they should have done instead of, like, Mandalorian and Grogu, but whatever. Well, that's a subject for another time.
Another day, right?
All right, as far as some Easter eggs, there's a few of them. You actually pointed one out while we were watching the show where the kid was playing with the ATST toy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Marionette, yeah.
Yep.
That was hilarious.
And then, of course, Erskine Samaj, who is he's a senator's aide. He was like one of Mothma's main aides. He was featured a lot in Rebels. He actually makes a live action appearance here. Kafrine was mentioned. That was like the password or whatever. I think that was mentioned earlier. I forgot to bring that up. That was a Rogue One reference.
The TIE Avenger.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's basically a Rogue One reference. And then, of course, you're getting a lot of other Easter eggs with, Tarkin's more ruled by fear and a lot of these connections to Rogue One. And I think what's going to happen is, as we get further along in these episodes, you're going to start to see a lot stronger connections to Rogue One. Because, I don't know, but I would imagine the K2SO is probably, if he doesn't make his appearance in the batch that's coming out this week,
definitely the one
I would definitely say, yeah. Because the thing is, by Rogue One, they have a huge rapport. It's like they've been with each other for a while.
Yeah.
So the next set of episodes, which comes out Tuesday, is going to be 3 years before the Battle of Yavin. Which means it's about 2 or 2.5 years before Rogue One. So, there has to be time for that bond to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just be like, they met each other a week before Rogue One, and they're all like,
yeah, exactly,
like trusted friends. Yeah, exactly. That'd be like, Han Solo and Chewbacca met each other like, a month before A New Hope or something. You can't do that. So, I don't know. Is there? So, overall, I guess we got to do our usual thing, right? First, we got to give the rating, and then after we give the rating, we got to say, well, what do we want to see in the next batch of episodes?
I would say episode 1 would be B+. I would say episode 2, I'll probably give it a B- C. Episode 3, I think that would get A-.
Oh, so you're going letter grades.
And then
we usually do the number rating.
Oh, yeah. Well, so I'm going to do that for this. So overall, for all 3, if I could kind of group them together, I think this batch would be a solid 8. 8.5.
Yeah, I would probably go like
8.
I'd probably say, like, if I'm gonna go like number system, 1's gonna get like an 8, 2's gonna get 7.5, 3's gonna get 8.5. I'll probably go 8.5 for the first 3 episodes, which sort of jives actually with Ted's earlier comment. Like, he actually wrote in, he's like, see y'all if I'm still awake, guys. If not, I'll just say the Andor could have easily been done 2 episodes instead of 3. That is the worst thing I have to say about it. Enjoyed it. 8.5 out of 10.
Okay.
And I mean, I could see the argument if you made each episode maybe like 5 to 10 minutes longer, you might have been able to absorb the key points of episode 2. But again, I don't know. I see where a lot of people are coming from, and I don't necessarily disagree, but I actually enjoyed episode 2, I think, more than a lot of people did, because I think it had more in it, and I think that it did move faster than what a lot of people made it out. So, that part is cool. All right, well, then what do you want to see now in the next batch of episodes?
I mean, of course, the aftermath, like, my mouth went like, okay, now that the wedding's over, how is she dealing with her husband?
Yeah, the first episode's going to be called Hangover.
Yeah, from Harvest to Hangover.
Harvest, episode 4, Hangover. Actually, though, that would, in a way, we're joking, but that would kind of work, because she could have a physical hangover, but then the galaxy's getting a little bit of a hangover, too.
Yeah, because now everybody's kind of like, all right, what happens the morning after all this stuff happens? Like, okay, that was a crazy night. What happened? Well, then now you have to figure out how you're going to deal with the rest of your day. So, yeah. But, of course, more between Dedra and Cyril. But I just want to know, like, where Cassian and where are they gonna go now? Like, where's their meetup?
Yeah, I mean, I think, because for me,
do they meet up with Luthen? Do they, like, where's the next stop? So, or what the next mission's going to be?
Right, because you got to presume there's going to be a mission. I mean, obviously, if I had
but it's a year later, right? So
yeah,
so it's not like it's going to pick up directly from.
No, and that's what's going to be really interesting about this.
So,
I mean, look, for all we know, we might not even see a meeting between K2SO and Andor. Might just be like, hey, this is what happened in the last year. But I do want to see that in the next batch. I want to see K2SO make his appearance in the next group of episodes. So for 4, 5, and 6, I'd like to see K2SO. I want to see a little bit more movement on Krennic's plan with Gorman, and I think that's ultimately what's going to happen next. A little bit of, and then of course, like you said, I want to see a little bit more of the progression of what goes on with Mothma and building both the rebellion, and also seeing a little bit more of the decay of the Senate. Because again, by episode 4, that's when the gloves are off and the Emperor just dissolved the Senate. Just like, you guys are, all right, we're done with this little charade, I kept it going, and I'm the Emperor now, and, that's just it. You guys are done. So, and then, of course, the local governors. And the other thing that I would love for them to do, they're not going to, but it would be great if we actually had an episode 13, 14, 15, because I would have liked to seen, well, what does the Senate do once they're dissolved?
Right.
It's like, okay, regional governors have control, fine. Okay, well then what do they do?
Do they just go get, jobs at Walmart or something?
Yeah, right. I mean, are they going to be like imperial butchers like exactly. Obi-Wan ended up being or whatever? Afterwards, you just getting a local job. I mean, do they deem them dangerous? Does he end up killing them all? Which, you wouldn't put it past him. So, yeah. So, yeah, we'll just have to see. All right. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I mean, it's going to be no mystery. Look, what we're going to be talking about. This is one thing that's good about when we do these reviews. You're never going to hear the phrase, hey, what are we talking about next week? Because we know what we're talking about next week.
Absolutely.
We're going to review episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Andor. So, let us know in the comments section what you guys thought of this batch. What was your favorite moment? You can either do, if you want, favorite moment from each episode, or maybe you just have a favorite moment for all 3 episodes. It's up to you. But either way, we'll see you guys next week for the next batch of Andor. Comes out Tuesday. Enjoy that. With that, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.